In Coronation Street at 7:30, Deirdre upsets her friends once again, but she does find an unlikely ally. Now at 5:20, the news from ITN.
Hello. French anti-terrorist forces have stormed the Air France jet being held at Marseille airport, killing all 5 hijackers. The co-pilot also died in the assault, which happened less than an hour ago. 4 passengers are said to have been injured. The special forces were sent in after the hijackers, Islamic fundamentalists, killed a 4th hostage. The drama unfolded after the plane had sat all day on the tarmac. As darkness fell, French security forces launched their attack, apparently after the hijackers killed a 4th hostage. There was an explosion at the rear of the plane. Gunfire could be heard on the ground. Not long after that, there was a second explosion. Fire engines rushed to the scene. Police say all 5 hijackers were killed, as was the co-pilot. The pilot, several passengers, and at least 1 French soldier were injured. Well, Adam Holloway, our reporter, is at Marseille now. Adam, what's the latest situation there?
I've literally just come from the scene. There are ambulances and fire engines going all over the place. About an hour ago, they launched the attack. Just as it was getting dark, there were explosions and gunfire. The situation there is very confused at the moment, but we have got news of casualties, probably the 5 hijackers dead, the co-pilot dead, and a number of others.
So it looks, Adam, as though the French weren't prepared to carry on with this, fearing even more casualties.
Well, they were in a very difficult position. I mean, if they continue to negotiate, they run the risk of continued effective executions of the prisoners, I beg your pardon, of the hostages by the hijackers. If they assault the plane, of course, they always run the risk of casualties as well. So it's been a very difficult decision, a very difficult day for them.
Was it very clear what the hijackers' demands were?
Their demands have been confused, but they did ask the Algerian authorities 2 days ago to release 2 Islamic leaders. Then they changed that and they said they were quite happy as long as they could leave Algeria and go somewhere else. The French then agreed to that. They landed early this morning, and now we find that following the refusal to give them fuel, they stormed the plane.
Do you think there's likely to be criticism of the way the authorities have handled this whole thing?
Well, for the last 3 days, I understand from security sources that the French Special Forces have been rehearsing on an exactly similar plane, an Airbus A300. Assaults like this are very difficult, and it's inevitable that there will be casualties.
Adam Holloway, thank you very much. Other news now. Russia today offered to hold talks with leader of the breakaway Republic of Chechnya, the first for almost 2 weeks. President Yeltsin also said he's willing to withdraw troops from the outskirts of the Chechen capital, Grozny. He told a meeting of his Security Council in Moscow that it is time to end the military campaign. Here, 4 people were killed today when their light aircraft crashed near Ongar in Essex. The plane hit electricity cables as it was trying to land, and it came down in a field near the M25 motorway. The 3 men and a woman on board were members of a local flying club who were returning from a rally flight. Now with the Boxing Day sport, here's Graham Miller.
Manchester United are back on top of the Premiership after a 3-2 win at Chelsea. Brian McClare got the winner after Chelsea had come back from 2 down. This morning's leaders Blackburn play tonight. Ian Rush boosted Liverpool's hopes with the vital goal at Leicester. Frustration for Newcastle and Leeds in a goalless draw at Elland Road, and no goals Coventry Forest. Guy Whittingham scored twice on his Sheffield Wednesday debut, ending Everton's unbeaten run under Joe Royle 4-1. And Mark Hateley put Rangers ahead of Hibs, 2-0 the final score in Scotland. Now the full classified check with Bob Colston.
Beginning with the FA Carling Premiership. Arsenal 0, Aston Villa 0. Chelsea 2, Manchester United 3. Coventry 0, Nottingham Forest 0. Crystal Palace 0, Queen's Park Rangers 0. Everton 1, Sheffield Wednesday 4. Leeds 0, Newcastle 0. Leicester 1, Liverpool 2. Manchester City against Blackburn is an evening kick-off. Norwich 0, Tottenham 2. Southampton 2, Wimbledon 3. And West Ham 1, Ipswich 1. Endsleigh League Division 1, Barnsley 4, Grimsby 1. At Burnley, the match was abandoned due to a waterlogged pitch with the score Burnley 1, Port Vale 2, Pools Value 1.5 points. Charlton 3, Southend 1, Notts County 0, Millwall 1, Oldham 4, Wolves 1, Reading 0, Luton 0, Sheffield United 1, Middlesbrough 1, Stoke 0, Swindon 0, Sunderland 1, Bolton 1, Tranmere 3, Derby 1, Watford 2, Portsmouth 0, and West Bromwich Albion 1, Bristol City 0. Division 2, Birmingham 1, Cambridge United 1, Brentford 3, Leyton Orient 0, Bristol Rovers 2, Bournemouth 1, Crewe 2, Chester 1, Hull 1, Huddersfield 0, Peterborough 1, Oxford 4, Rotherham 3, Bradford 1, Shrewsbury 0, Cardiff 1, Stockport 1, Wrexham 1, Swansea 3, Plymouth 0, Wycombe 0, Brighton 0, and York 4, Blackpool 0. Division 3, Bury 3, Wigan 3, Chesterfield 2, Doncaster 0, Colchester 0, Northampton 1, Darlington 1, Scarborough 0, Exeter 1, Torquay 2, Gillingham 4, Fulham 1, Hartlepool 1, Carlisle 5, Mansfield 7, Hereford 1, Preston 3, Rochdale 0, Scunthorpe 2, Lincoln 0, and Walsall 4, Barnet 0. GM Vauxhall Conference, Merthyr 2, Bath 0, Southport 5, Runcorn 0, Telford 0, Stafford 0, and Welling 0, Dover 1. Tennent's Scottish Cup, first round, not on the pools, Albion 2, Montrose 5. Bell's Scottish League Premier Division, Aberdeen 0, Celtic 0, Dundee United 2, Kilmarnock 2, Falkirk 0, Motherwell 1, Hearts 3, Partick Thistle 0, and Rangers 2, Hibernian 0. Scottish Division 1, Ayr 1, Clydebank 1, Hamilton 0, Dundee 1, Raith 3, Airdrie 2, St Johnstone 3, Dunfermline 2, and not on the pools, St Mirren 1, Stranraer 0. Scottish Division 2, not on the pools, Clyde 0, Greenock Morton 0, Dumbarton 4, East Fife 0, and Queen of the South 1, Stenhousemuir 2. Division 3, Cowdenbeath 1, Caledonian 1, Queen's Park 2, East Stirlingshire 3, and finally the match between Ross County and Forfar was postponed.
Thanks, Bob. Let's have a quick look at the pools news, and I think it's going to be pretty good. There it is. Jackpot forecast. The high score draws, the high score draws 35 and 51, but 6 jackpot draws, 10, 17, 19, 23, 31 and 55, and 9 no-score draws. Those are the numbers. The forecast, a possible jackpot, telephone claims for 22.5 and 23 points. Finally, cricket. England's attempt to build on their promising opening in the second test against Australia suffered a setback today. They bowled Australia out for 279, but failed to capitalise, ending the second day on 148 for 4. That's 131 runs behind. England may have to chase those without vice-captain Alex Stewart, who broke the same finger he'd fractured earlier on the tour of Australia.
That's it from ITN for now. We'll be back at 10:15. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Hello, good evening as we go into a wet and windy Boxing Day night in the south, with gales, in fact, in exposed places. Now, further north, the problems are more in the form of frost as well as icy roads, and then we are expecting fog floating around in parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, as well as the north of England. So as we go into tomorrow morning, we do so mainly on a dry and fairly bright note. We see the remnants of the overnight rain then the very far south, but the clouds never too far away. And during the course of the day, well, that piles up and then pushes up from the south, getting as far as, roughly speaking, the Manchester area by the afternoon, with temperatures mild in the south, a high of 11, that's 52 Fahrenheit, and cooler 4 or 5, high 30s to low 40s in the north. Here's the summary.
Locally, a wet and windy evening is in store with rain in many parts and with a fresh, occasionally strong south to southwest wind. Later in the evening, this rain will clear to the east, leaving the rest of the night dry in most areas, although a few showers are still possible in South Yorkshire and Lincolnshire. The wind will ease down during the early hours of the morning, allowing temperatures to dip to 3 Celsius 37 Fahrenheit. Tomorrow will be a dry day in all areas, and although there'll be a lot of high cloud around, it will be fairly bright. Temperatures as today on 7 Celsius 45 Fahrenheit, and the wind will be light, variable in direction, settling into an easterly by the end of the day. Tomorrow's summary, dry and bright with light winds.